Welcome back to the Outside Show. We've had no shortage of people behaving badly outside, but this time a story out of Hawaii has some consequences to that behavior. Joining us today to talk about this is Adam Roy, editor-in-chief of Backpacker Magazine. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
For joining us. So, Stairway to Heaven, infamous perhaps hike now that has been actually already off limits for a while. What's changing now?
That's right. This Stairway to Heaven, which is actually a nickname for the haiku stairs, was built in the 1940s and was open to the public until 1987. In 1987, the Coast Guard, which managed it, closed it to the public because of bad behavior. It has been closed since then, despite efforts to reopen it. But despite that, people keep hiking it. And finally, the city of Honolulu more or less decided it had enough and has announced they're going to dismantle it.
Wow.
It's going to cost over $1 million, take a couple of years, and most of the sections are going to have to be flown out by helicopter.
Wow.
And are there going to be people like working on this, or is it all just going to be sort of like picking up the trail and flying it away? Or is it going to be like people up there really just breaking down the trail and the stairs?
Well, it's going to be flown off in segments by helicopter, and then the segments will be broken down on the ground.
Okay.
That sounds like a pretty invasive project, but in response to some pretty kind of bad things happening. So not only were people trespassing on public land at the base, or private land, sorry, to get to the hike, but then there's a whole list of things that were going on wrong, like not just trash, but other things too. What was the behavior that they were seeing?
Well, there are a few reasons that the city finally took this step, but I think one big one, or the two big ones I should say, were trespassing. Because there is no public access to this hike, despite the fact that the hike itself is on city-owned property, people were cutting through neighborhoods, yards at the bottom of the hike, and residents were complaining. Another big issue was this hike, while no one has ever died on it, is the site of regular rescues. Helicopter rescues can be very expensive, run thousands of dollars. And this was one of the hikes that motivated a current bill that would charge people who trespass on illegal trails for the cost of their own rescue. The city of Honolulu more or less decided that the danger of it and the expense of it was not worth it anymore.
Wow.
And right, so they had police officers that would, so people would do this hike, and they had police officers that would show up and give people tickets at the end of their hike day, right? To make sure to stop people from hiking.
Yeah, and not just a few people either. During one 10-day period, they ticketed almost, I want to say almost 100 people.
Wow.
And arrested about a half dozen for trespassing. Yes.
Handcuffs for hikers.
So the fact that this hike is illegal has not stopped people.
No, why is that? Why are people just ignoring the signs, ignoring everything, and going anyway?
Well, one reason is social media. I hesitate to be the guy who's like, oh, Instagram ruined it for everybody. But Instagram did kind of ruin it for everyone. Yeah. So this hike is stunning. It's a staircase running up this precipitous ridgeline. And people would do this hike, post the photos on Instagram, and that would draw more people in this kind of vicious cycle. And actually, the popularity of this in the media dates back to before the internet. One of the reasons it became so popular originally was it appeared on an episode of Magnum P.I., back when it was still legal to hike it in the 80s.
I mean, that was before my time, so I didn't catch
before
that.
Before mine too, yeah.
And it sounds like people who are friends of the haiku stairs, the Stairway to Heaven, it sounds like they don't want it removed. There's some people who are hesitant to have it taken away.
There's a lot of public opposition to removing it. Whether it's a majority of people or not depends on who you ask. But when you think about it, this hike, besides being very beautiful, has been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
It was built as part of the U.S. war effort in World War II. So people have grown up with this. It's been there their whole lives. They have an emotional attachment to it. And I think many people are upset because they believed that at some point we were going to figure out how to reopen this. And now they're not going to. This is a definitive end to it. They're not going to have the chance to hike it.
Now, are there other hikes that are available around this area that are just as scenic, but people just only go to this one place?
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of different trails around Honolulu. There actually is another hike that takes you up to the same point the haiku stairs does. It's arguably more dangerous. It's some years had more rescues, but it is legal to take.
That's scary. I've never been hiking in Honolulu. Have you ever been hiking?
No, but my guess is it's wet, slippery, muddy, steep.
Yeah, there's all of the above. And many people who show up are not ready for those conditions. They're people who came more as tourists, weren't necessarily ready for a hard hike. And this hike, despite the fact that mile-wise it's not that long, can take hours at a time to do. That's how many people end up having to get rescued. They're either not in shape for it or they don't leave themselves the correct amount of time.
Yeah, and the staircase itself, I read, is almost 4,000 steps. So that's a serious undertaking. Do you think there are any last-ditch efforts that could save access to this, or are we past the point of no return? It's getting yeeted into the ocean.
Anything's possible, but it does seem like this is going to happen. The city has already inked the contract. They say they're going to start work later this month. It's not going to be a quick process.
Yeah.
It's going to take a couple of years. But when there's enough public will for a trail to be somewhere, I really do believe that it's a possibility.
And hopefully, if it comes back, people will be on better behavior. I mean, that's my whole takeaway is, as we collectively kind of behave worse and worse in the outdoors. People are leaving trash here. There is worries about invasive species. There can be, and will be actual consequences.
Yeah, and this problem gets magnified any place that sees a lot of tourists. I mean,
Right.
Tourist towns in Colorado see this, southern Utah, California, and Hawaii too. Part of being a good backpacker or a good hiker is respecting the people who live in your destination and not really putting upon them like that.
Yeah, I can't say I blame, Jane Schmo for being a little bummed that people are chomping through her garden to get to this hike. But we will keep you updated. We'll have you come back on if there are any updates. And maybe instead of this being a punishment, it'll be a wake-up call for people to start behaving better outside.
We're gonna hang our laundry on the line. But next, we'll discuss how some products may not be as green as you may think.